Hey, welcome back. In this video today, I've got something very special for you. As I grow my video production company up over the last 10 years, from nothing to making six figures and working with some of the world's biggest brands and broadcasters, I'm often asked, how much money is it possible to make in this industry? When I first started, one of my biggest concerns was whether or not I could make the kind of money I wanted while working behind the camera, whether that's as a director, producer, camera operator, DOP, or editor. At the time, I'd see a few people online making a killing doing the creative work they loved, and nowadays we're inundated on social media with successful creators. But it's not exactly clear how these people are making their income, and I know that back when I was starting, it would have helped to have more information around this topic. So in this video, I'll be sharing my story with as much transparency as I can, along with the 5 stages I went through to go from zero to making a 6-figure income. So let's start at the beginning with my first stage, which is to develop a specialist skill. When I first started my career, I knew I wanted to work in film, but studying film and video at university left me poorly equipped on actually how to make an income. So with my degree that cost me tens of thousands of pounds, I went to work on film sets for free. As I started to gain awareness of different roles in the industry, I found myself in the camera department on large film and TV productions working as an assistant. This was fairly well paid for an entry-level role, and I was making around £150 to £250 a day. It was fascinating seeing how these big productions were run and how they got their cinematic look. But the 12-hour days were grueling, and it wasn't creative work being an assistant. However, I'd highly recommend to anyone thinking about a career in film to get some experience on big sets working as a runner or assistant. Doing this gave me a really good understanding of the camera department and inspired me to pursue work as a cameraman. Using what I'd learned, I began promoting myself in my new role, contacting production companies by email and phone to make an introduction. Within a few months, I was getting fairly consistent work and charging around £300 to £450 a day. The exact wage depended on the type of job and whether or not I'd be doing other roles too, like lighting and sound, but roughly speaking, you can expect to make anywhere from £50,000 to £80,000 a year in a role like this. I really enjoyed this work, and I found that the key to success at this stage was to develop a specialist skill and stick to it, letting everyone know that's what you do. I see far too many people out there trying to be a jack of all trades, and they struggle to get noticed. Hone in on one craft that you enjoy to begin with, and you can always expand into other areas later. After a while, I felt like I'd maxed out my earning potential in this phase, and the downside is that your income is limited by your time. You can only be in one place at a time, and you can only charge so much per shoot. The next stage I discovered to increasing my income was buying and renting equipment. This comes with a warning because one of the biggest mistakes I see creatives make is over-investing in equipment early on. Or not really investing, but rather just buying lots of nice camera gear. When done correctly, however, buying and renting equipment can be a big boost to your income. There are 2 different ways of hiring out kit. Either with you attached as the operator, known as wet hire, or just the kit on its own, known as dry hire. I'll talk about wet hire first because that's where I started and had the best results. Once I was confident that I had enough work coming in, I decided to take the plunge. The first camera I bought cost around £6,000, and the accessories and basic lights took it up to around £10,000. The rule of thumb with equipment rentals, and what you'll find at rental houses, is that you can hire out gear for around 2% of the purchase price. So in my case, my £10,000 of gear added around £200 per day to my income. This meant that I had to hire myself out with my equipment around 50 times to pay off the kit, after which point it was all additional profit. So I highly recommend, if you're thinking about buying kit, that you're confident that you'll get at least 50 paying jobs over the coming months. There's added risk, but in my opinion, as long as you do the math and have consistent work coming in, it's worth it. Now, the second type of rental income is from dry hire. This is where you list your equipment on rental sites or tell other filmmakers in your area that it's available to hire. I personally only dry hire out my equipment to people I know. There are plenty of sites to list on, but there's more work and risk involved. You have to make sure the kit is prepped and ready for every hire, and there's always a risk that it comes back damaged. You can get insurance for this, but if there's a problem that coincides with another paying shoot, you could jeopardize that too. The dry hire approach works well for some people, especially when they've got a wide selection to rent out, but in my opinion, at least for me, it's not worth the added risk. Hiring out to people I know still adds a little nice boost to my income, but only a couple of £100 a month. The biggest gains come from hiring the kit out with me as the operator, which not only increased my charging potential by an extra £200 or so per day, but also made me more appealing as I could be hired out as a complete package. In just a moment, we'll get to the phase that had the biggest impact on my income, but before then, it's worth mentioning that another great way to supplement your income is through licensing footage. I got into this a little bit by accident, but quickly realised that there's money to be made without much extra work. On one of my first big event projects, I was working with a local artist who installed a giant water slide down the main street of a nearby city. The project got a lot of attention from news outlets all over the world, and because I'd put together one of the best films, they all got in touch asking to use my footage. Although it was a free project to begin with, I made far more than I would have if it was a paying client. Selling the footage ranged from £200 per clip to £2,000 or even £3,000 for full usage. And the best bit was that this went on for a couple of years after the shoot, without requiring much more than a few emails and a file transfer on my part. Over the years, there have been a few projects that I've been able to do this with, and here are 3 things to keep in mind. First, look for interesting projects that have wide appeal. Anything that has PR or press coverage is a good bet, and there's also a chance that you'll be able to piggyback off that. Second, be sure to list your name and contact details below the video wherever it's shown. Ideally, you want it on your own channel, but if that's not possible, make sure that you stipulate with the other party that in return for showing your film, that they credit you correctly. Third, if it's a large media outlet or organisation, be sure to ask what their going rates are for footage. In every case I've had so far, the person responsible for media acquisition has been honest and transparent about what they pay for footage. They usually have a fixed budget, and simply asking saves any unnecessary guesswork. Although these came in bursts, averaged out over the years, this kind of footage licensing was generating around £200 to £500 a month, which isn't a huge amount, but it's nice additional income if you're being paid for the work as well. Before we move on, the other way you can increase your income through licensing footage is with stock sites. These are sites where you simply upload once and then you get paid a percentage whenever your footage is used. On the plus side, this is passive income, but over the years this has become increasingly competitive. I met a photographer once who'd made over $1 million from a single stock photo, but this happened over 10 years ago and there was less competition back then. Nowadays, it's more realistic to expect a couple of $100 extra a month from stock sites, depending of course on how much you upload. You'll also find that it's only worth uploading in 4K or above, as sites will pay significantly more for higher resolutions, and some won't even accept HD anymore. If you are shooting in 4K and you own the footage, set aside a couple of hours and try uploading some of your best shots to one of the many sites and just see how it goes. You might just find it becomes a nice side income. The fourth phase has been owning and running a production company. This is where, rather than being hired to do a specific task, you're in charge of the whole production, from working with a client to scripting, shooting, editing and delivery. You either have to be able to do all of these things yourself, have employees, or hire contractors that you manage. So after around 3 years of working as a cameraman, I wanted to continue growing and I saw the potential to make more money working with businesses directly. And over the previous years, as well as developing my skills, I built up some good contacts and expanded my network. This meant I had some low-hanging fruit that I could use to start my business. And to begin with, I was landing jobs in the £800 to £2,000 range. On top of this, during my first year, I was able to supplement my business income with a contract work that was now paying around £700 to £1,000 a day. And this is why I think it's helpful to develop a specialist skill before you start your business, because you have a safety net and a good foundation to build upon. To begin with, most of the jobs I was doing myself, planning, shooting and editing videos for small businesses. This was fine for those smaller clients up to the £2,000 mark, where the video only required an interview or two and some cutaways, but as the clients grew and productions became more complex, I found I was spreading myself too thin. And while it may seem tempting at first to try and do everything yourself because on the surface it looks like you make more profit, the reality is you're tying your income with your time. With this employee mindset, your earning potential is capped by the number of hours you have in the day. At first, I didn't really know how to hire people or manage a team, so it was at this point where I got really serious about educating myself on the business side. I wanted to know how to put systems in place in my business so I could streamline processes, get better results, and create more freedom in my life. When you start your own business, it's very easy to be the employee or operator without actually realizing it, and it's not until you start putting systems in place that you actually start to take control. In my opinion, this is where things get really exciting. Over the following years and months, as I developed my understanding of business and started putting systems in place, I went from charging an average of £2,000 per video to now £20,000 and up. For example, a shoot I did recently for a client that I charged £20,000 for required me to hire a camera operator, sound recordist, and an assistant producer/director. Then I have a full-time editor who pieces everything together while I'm continuing to run the business and develop the next big project. The key here is that my earning potential is no longer directly connected to my time, so I can have multiple projects like these on the go and keep momentum in the business. At this point, I'm still very much involved in the projects, mostly because I want to be, but over time, as I put more systems in place, I'll create even more freedom and the option to step back more when I need to. So stay tuned on this channel because I'll be sharing my progress and findings with you as I continue to grow my business. So how much can you earn while running a video production company? Well, in my experience, as you grow, you also take on more risk and expenses. So unlike working as a contractor, you don't have a day rate that's pretty much 100% profit. For a typical £20,000 project, I'd expect to spend around £10,000 in direct production costs, such as crew, equipment, transport, recce's, and so on. Then around £5,000 accounts for my time and overheads, such as admin, meetings, my time on set, and my full-time editor. Then the final £5,000 is both wiggle room and potential profit. I don't charge my clients by the day, so I'm entirely taking on the risk if something goes wrong or takes longer than expected. And this is where the last 25% of the budget is the safety net. But with increased risk also comes increased reward. So if the project goes smoothly, which it will as you get more experienced, you also become more profitable. These numbers are really just a rough guide and projects will vary, but the beauty of running your own business is that you get to choose these things. You get to choose how to allocate your resources and how to spend your budgets. So to answer the earlier question about how much money a production company can make, anywhere from £150,000 to £300,000 a year is reasonable, with some doing less and some doing considerably more. At the end of the day, the one thing that I found to be the biggest factor in how much a company makes is you, or me. That is, the mindset of the business owner, which is the fifth phase that I'd like to share with you. Mindset can make or break a business, because ultimately, behind every business is a person responsible for making decisions, both long-term strategic decisions and within the day-to-day running of the business. While at first mindset might not seem like a phase like the others I've talked about, it has really been the thread that holds everything together. A process of over a decade of learning and one that's still ongoing to this day. Before progressing to each stage of my career and development, I've always had to level up my mindset first. It's not something that happens after you make it, rather you need to become the person required for the role before you step into those shoes. And I'm not really being woo-woo here or talking about manifestation. This is something I've had to make a conscious effort to educate myself on over time. While you hear many people say that making money is a game of luck, most entrepreneurs I've listened to say that if they were to lose everything tomorrow, they'd be wealthy again within a few years. As well as the knowledge they've gained, this is down to the mindset they've developed about money, success, and business. In my personal experience, there have been multiple times where I've charged a client what I thought was a lot of money, only to find out later that they were willing and able to pay a lot more. This is called consumer surplus, and it happens to all of us whenever we're willing to pay more for a product or service than what we actually pay, whether that's a coffee or a house. As business owners, it's our job to minimize consumer surplus, not so we can squeeze the most out of every customer, rather so we can create the most possible value in every situation. Just like I did, most new business owners massively undercharge in the early years of their business, and oftentimes they don't know it, but fear and bad habits are what hold them back. This fear usually stems from scarcity, worrying about overcharging, losing the client, and not being able to pay next month's bills. And perhaps even more detrimental, we mix up our beliefs and habits around personal finance with business. Most people grow up being taught not to talk about money, like it's impolite, or some parents will ingrain the belief that money's scarce and it must be held tightly, saved, and only spent when absolutely necessary. The reality is that these conventions around personal finance do not apply to business, and unless new habits and beliefs are learnt, these unhelpful and outdated ones will seep into meetings and business negotiations where they do more harm than good. Having come from a background where growing up money was scarce and being told that money doesn't grow on trees, I've been acutely aware of how my business growth has been directly tied to my evolving mindset around money. Sometimes the only thing that separates a wealthy business person and a struggling one is the ability to say a number like 20,000 instead of 2,000, but there's a mindset shift that needs to go on behind the scenes. It took time to re-educate myself, but as I said earlier, this has been the thread that holds everything together and has enabled me to grow multiple six-figure businesses. So what can you do right now to elevate your mindset with money and ultimately make more of it? Firstly, there have been a few books that I found to be hugely influential on this topic. There's Think and Grow Rich, a classic by Napoleon Hill, who studied over 500 self-made millionaires and then boils his findings down into 13 key principles. Then there's Start With Why by Simon Sinek, which counterintuitively shows that money is never really the main reason that people want to be successful, and in fact there are deeper, more important things at play. Then, as well as books, one of the most impactful things you can do is surround yourself with successful people. They say you're the sum of the 5 people you spend most time with, and simply put, if you start spending more time with the kind of people you want to become, you'll get there a lot faster. You can meet up with like-minded business owners through Facebook groups, networking events, or even just reaching out directly to people you admire and asking if they'd be up for helping by answering a few questions. Another great way to glean useful knowledge and learn about the way successful people think is through interviews, which you can find on YouTube and in documentaries. I found watching interviews with CEOs and successful creative business owners to be a great addition to the other tips I just suggested. Whether you're just starting out or have been in business for years, it helps to learn from those who've been where you are now. I learnt many of these lessons the hard way through persistence, mistakes, and trial and error. And that's why now, as well as working in the film and video industry, I created a virtual online mentoring program called Video Business Mastery, specifically for anyone who wants to make a living from video production. Inside, I've distilled the lessons I've learned over 10 years into simple, easy to follow guides that take you step by step from 0 to 6 figures, working with your ideal clients and creating more time for the creative things you enjoy most. The hundreds of students who've already joined have found it dramatically improved their relationship with money and gave them the tools and steps they need to land more clients at higher rates.
Since joining the Video Business Mastery course, I went from charging, I would say, a ridiculous amount of money per video, so, in the hundreds of pounds area, and just fearing getting to £1,000, to now landing clients very recently for, multiple thousands of pounds for the exact same quality of work. It's now just completely, that the way that I now approach a meeting has brought me from a couple £100 for a video or a project to thousands of pounds per video and project.
If you're interested in joining this fast-growing community of filmmakers with one-on-one mentoring, group coaching, and a support network of like-minded peers, I suggest checking out the free 1-hour training that I'll link below. Inside, you'll find my top 10 secrets to video business success and a selection of ideas and tools that you can start implementing in your business right away, as well as information on how to join the full course if you enjoy the free content. I hope you found this video useful and you can go out and implement some of the things that I've shared here today. I'd love to know if anything I've spoken about here has piqued your interest, or if there's something you'd like me to talk more about. Let me know in the comments and I'll try and reply to everyone. Be sure to hit subscribe if you want to catch my next video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you then.